A few years back, we went to Tombstone, Arizona to do a video on the gunfight at the OK Corral. While I was there, I remember seeing a picture of a young Big Nose Kate hanging on the wall of the Big Nose Kate Saloon on Allen Street. I remember being surprised at how pretty she actually was, not like the older pictures that I'd seen in the past. In the 1930s, when Kate was in her 80s and living at the Arizona Pioneers home in Prescott, she was needing money and wanted to cash in on the growing interest of the gunfight at the OK Corral. Kate agreed to tell her story for the first time to a Dr. Glenn Boyer, an Arizona history professor. Dr. Boyer described the 85-year-old Kate as trim, well-spoken, and searching for respectability in her old age. He said Kate made several statements that couldn't be verified, such as that her and Doc Holliday being married, and that she was with Doc in Glenwood Springs, Colorado when he died. But this was Kate's story, so he let her tell it the way she wanted. Kate told her story like this.
Well, they want me to tell my story, but what they really want is for me to tell about John Henry Holliday, whom they called Doc. Yes, I knew Doc and all the Earps too, but that was a long time ago. As I look back, I remember myself not as the old woman I am now, but as the young, pretty woman I used to be.
My real name is Maria Isabella Magdaleno Harney. I was born November 9, 1850 in Budapest, Hungary. I am the eldest of 7 children. My parents were Dr. Michael Harney and Catherine Baldazar. I speak 4 languages: Hungary, French, Spanish, and English. I received a superior education defining my station up until I was 15. At that time, both my parents passed away within a year of each other. My family had moved from Hungary to Mexico, where my father had been accepted as one of the personal physicians to Emperor Maximilian. When the emperor was overthrown, my family escaped to the United States and finally settled in Davenport, Iowa. This is a photo of me seated and my younger sister Wilhelmina standing when I was 15, before my life changed forever. In March 1865, when my parents died, we were all sent to live under the foster care of the family of one Ott Smith. However, I was not interested in the normal life planned for me. After only a few months at the age of 16, I snuck off from foster care, leaving my siblings behind. I hid among the cargo on a steamboat headed for St. Louis. I was soon discovered and turned over to Captain Fisher. He must have felt sorry for me because he let me stay. Besides, it was too late to take me back. When I arrived in St. Louis, Captain Fisher helped me enroll in Ursuline Convent School. It was around this time I began calling myself Mary Catherine Fisher, after Captain Fisher. I soon left the convent and married a dentist named Silas Melvin, whom I had a son with. Unfortunately, both my husband and son died from yellow fever the same year. I was lost and did not care about anything. I ventured to Wichita and then on to Dodge City, Kansas. There I went to work as a sporting woman for Nellie Bessie Earp, the sister-in-law of lawman Wyatt Earp and the wife of Wyatt Earp's brother James. In 1874, I was arrested and fined while working for Bessie. I admit I was a dance hall prostitute with a tough, stubborn temper and belonged to no man. In 1875, I changed my last name to Elder. I became Mary Kate Elder after leaving Dodge, where I had wore out my welcome, and ended up in Griffin, Texas. In Griffin, I found a job practicing my trade at John Shancy's saloon. There is where I met John Henry Holliday. He was dealing cards at Shancy's at night and practiced dentistry in the day. He was a Southern gentleman and spoke with refinement. We were both educated, and I guess that was the attraction. We departed Griffin together in the middle of the night after Doc spotted Ed Bally, a local bully, sneaking peeks at the discards. Doc insisted Bally forfeit the pot. Bally refused and pulled his gun from under the table. Doc was forced to use his knife, killing him. It was a pure case of self-defense, but he was arrested for murder anyway. He was placed in a local hotel room as there was no jail in Griffin. When Bally's friends began talking about taking revenge on Doc, I decided to help him by setting fire to an old shed. While everyone was trying to keep the town from burning down, I held a gun on the only guard watching him. We headed back to Kansas on stolen horses. When we arrived in Dodge City, we registered as Dr. and Mrs. J.H. Holliday at Deacon Cox's boarding house. Doc promised to give up gambling and only practice dentistry for a living. I, in turn, promised to give up my life as a sporting woman. For a while, we tried to live a respectable life. Doc soon learned that dentistry didn't pay as good as the gambling tables, and I needed money and began easing back into the sporting life while still trying to maintain my loyalty to Doc. His disease became worse, and he was easy to anger. Both being strong-willed, it was natural that violence would occur. I admit we argued, made up, fought, separated, and argued some more. I loved John Henry, thought the world of him, and he was always kind to me. That is, until he started drinking and got mixed up with those Earps. He first met Wyatt in Griffin, Texas, then in Dodge, and later followed them to Tombstone. Although we did not always travel together, our paths would cross from time to time, and when it did, it started all over again. In 1879, I was working in Prescott when we reunited. He was on his way to meet the Earps in Tombstone. While in Prescott, he had been lucky at the tables, winning thousands of dollars, and promised he would use part of his winnings to finance a sporting house for me. Doc trusted Wyatt more than any man alive. He once said Wyatt was the only man that had never lied to him. So we went to Tombstone. Tombstone was loud with silver money and louder with men who thought they could live by their own rules. In Tombstone, Doc's disease was getting worse. He would cough up blood and use his handkerchief to hide it from others. He knew he was dying all the time I was with him. I began working only when I had to. Doc was extremely jealous, especially when he was drinking, and I guess I was jealous too. When I was locked up in March 1881, I had been drinking heavy and was mad from having a row with him because he had kicked me out. The Benson stage had been robbed a few months earlier, and they wanted to charge Doc with it. They caught me while I was mad, drunk, and wanting out of jail. They asked, "Did he talk about the robbery?" "Yes," I said. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I would regret them. When the liquor faded, I told them I said it only to hurt him, but it's not true. There was no proof against him anyway, so they had to let him go. I left Tombstone for several months as Doc was still mad at me. By then, tensions between the Earps and cowboys were high. I have no affection for the cowboy faction. They were dangerous, lawless, and unreliable. Tombstone was divided and ready to erupt. Everyone knew trouble was coming. The cowboys would have killed the Earps if given a chance. Doc would never have been involved if not for his loyalty to Wyatt. The day of the gunfight, I was in town and heard the gunfire, as most others did. My concern was for Doc. We were together, but not like before. His mind was on the trial. Doc, alone with the Earps, were charged with murder. I stayed loyal through the trial, and when Morgan Earp was assassinated, everything changed. Doc rode with the Earps seeking revenge for Morgan's death. He was on the run as an outlaw. His mind was on staying alive, not on me. There was no choice but to drift apart after Tombstone. Through the following years, I moved from town to town. I worked in saloons, ran boarding houses, and did anything to stay alive. It was years after I heard of John Henry's death that I married George Cummings. He was a blacksmith and quiet, steady man, just to share his roof.
I have outlived them all, the Earps, the cowboys, and the gunfighters. People often ask me about John Henry Holliday. I tell them the truth. He was no saint, he was no coward, and he was the only man I have ever loved. The rest of my story, the rest was just surviving.